A millionaire confronted a cleaning lady. Her secret left him speechless. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The first time anyone truly noticed her, it was already late. The kind of late where office lights glow softer and the city outside sounds farther away. She pushed a gray cleaning cart down the polished hallway, her shoes quiet against marble floors that reflected her silhouette like a second, thinner shadow. Her name was Elena Brooks, and most people only knew her by the color of her uniform. She worked the night shift, always the night shift, because nights were invisible. Nights did not ask questions. Elena moved methodically, wiping glass doors, straightening chairs, collecting the evidence of power left behind by people who would never know her name. Half-empty coffee cups, smudged fingerprints on conference tables, a forgotten blazer draped over a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. She paused at the end of the hall, glancing at her phone. 8:47 in the evening. She was running behind. Not because she was careless, but because she had stayed an extra 10 minutes in the restroom, rereading the same message over and over again. The hospital billing department. Final notice. Elena slipped the phone back into her pocket and took a breath. One more floor, then she would be done. She rolled the cart toward the executive wing, a place she usually avoided. Tonight, however, her supervisor had reassigned zones at the last minute. She had nodded without protest. She always did. The executive wing smelled different. Cleaner, sharper, like money and lemon polish. Elena adjusted her gloves and stepped inside. That was when a voice stopped her cold. "Excuse me." The voice was calm, controlled, and unmistakably used to being obeyed. Elena turned. A man stood several feet away, tall, well-dressed, his suit perfectly tailored. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The confidence in his posture did the work for him. "What do you think you are doing here?" he asked. Elena felt her shoulders tense, but she did not shrink. She had learned long ago that shrinking only invited more questions. "I am assigned to this floor tonight," she said evenly. The man's eyes flicked to her uniform, then back to her face, not angry, assessing, as if she were a line item that did not belong on his spreadsheet. "This area is restricted," he said. "Cleaning staff usually finishes before executive hours." "I was told to complete the conference rooms," Elena replied. Her voice did not waver. He took a step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle. "By whom?" he asked. Elena hesitated for half a second. Not because she was afraid, but because she was tired. Tired of proving that she had a right to exist in spaces that were not built for her. "My supervisor," she said. The man studied her again, longer this time. His gaze lingered, as if searching for something out of place, something that would confirm whatever assumption had already formed in his mind. "Finish quickly," he said at last, "and stay out of the boardroom." Elena nodded once. "Yes, sir." As she pushed her cart past him, she felt it. That familiar weight, not shame, not anger, something quieter, the ache of being unseen. She did not look back. What neither of them knew, not yet, was that this moment would not end when the hallway lights dimmed. It would follow them into rooms where titles mattered, where truths surfaced, and where silence could be louder than any confrontation. And when it did, one of them would realize just how wrong first impressions could be. Elena finished the executive wing just after 9:30. By the time she rolled her cart back into the service elevator, her arms ached and her back felt tight, but her face showed nothing. It never did. She had learned how to leave her emotions behind with the dust she swept away. The elevator doors closed, and only then did she let out a slow breath. She rode down to the lower floors, where the lights were harsher and the rooms less forgiving. Copy rooms, storage areas, empty cubicles where ambition once sat in neat rows. Elena worked through them steadily, her movements practiced, almost automatic, but her mind was not. The man from the executive wing stayed with her. Not his words exactly, but the way he had looked at her. Not curious, not cruel, just certain. Certain that he understood the world and her place in it. She had seen that look before. Elena emptied a trash bin and paused when something caught her eye. A folded document, partially hidden beneath crumpled paper. She hesitated, then pulled it free. It was a financial report. Confidential, marked clearly at the top. She frowned. This did not belong in the trash. For a brief moment she considered leaving it. No one would ever know. It was not her responsibility. She was just the cleaning lady. But she did not think that way. She never had. Elena tucked the document carefully into her cart and continued working. When her shift ended, instead of clocking out, she took the elevator back up. The executive wing was quieter now. Most of the lights were off. The glass walls reflected her figure again, smaller than before in the darkness. She approached the front desk, where a young security guard sat scrolling through his phone. "Excuse me," Elena said gently. "Someone left this in the trash. It looks important." The guard glanced at the document, then at her. Surprise flickered across his face. "I will take it to Mr. Carter," he said. Elena nodded. "Thank you." She turned to leave. "Wait," the guard added. "You could have ignored this." Elena offered a small, tired smile. "I did not think that would be right." She walked away without another word. From behind the glass walls of his office, Daniel Carter watched her go. Daniel Carter, founder, majority owner, the man people whispered about in boardrooms and feared in meetings, the same man who had stopped her in the hallway earlier that evening. He had seen the exchange through the reflection on his window. He had heard her voice, calm, respectful, unafraid. Most people in his building avoided eye contact. They apologized before being accused. They bent. She had not. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. The cleaning staff usually blurred into the background of his life, necessary, invisible. Tonight, one of them had refused to stay invisible. He thought of the document she had returned, a draft report tied to a sensitive acquisition. Leaking it could have made someone very rich. She had chosen honesty instead. Interesting. The next night, Elena arrived for her shift as usual. Same uniform, same cart, same quiet determination. She did not know that her name had already been looked up, her file reviewed, her schedule memorized. She did not know that Daniel Carter had canceled a dinner reservation so he could stay late. When she entered the executive wing again, she felt it immediately. The air was different, watchful. She focused on her work. Half an hour later, footsteps approached. "Elena Brooks," a familiar voice said. She straightened slowly and turned. Daniel Carter stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Yes, sir," she said. He held her gaze. "I was told you returned something that did not belong to you last night." "I returned something that did not belong in the trash," Elena replied. A corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You could have benefited from that mistake," he said. "Many people would have." Elena met his eyes. "I am not many people." Silence settled between them. For the first time, Daniel Carter was not sure what to say next, and that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. The silence lingered longer than Elena expected. Daniel Carter did not raise his voice. He did not dismiss her. He simply stood there, studying her as if she were a problem he could not quite solve. "You understand why that document mattered," he said finally. "I understood that it did not belong in the trash," Elena replied. "That was not what I asked." Elena considered her words carefully. "I understood that someone trusted this building to keep their work safe." Daniel nodded slowly. "And you decided that trust mattered more than whatever you might gain." "Yes." Another pause. Daniel stepped aside, clearing the path behind her. "You may continue your work." Elena inclined her head and returned to her cart. She did not look back, but she felt his eyes on her until she turned the corner. For the rest of the shift, nothing unusual happened. No more confrontations, no more questions, just the familiar rhythm of wiping, straightening, collecting what others left behind. By midnight, she was finished. Elena clocked out and stepped into the cool night air. The city lights stretched above her, indifferent and beautiful. She walked to the bus stop, her coat pulled tight, her thoughts drifting back to the hospital bill waiting on her kitchen counter. She did not know that upstairs, long after she left, Daniel Carter was still in his office. He stared at the city from behind floor-to-ceiling glass, the reflection of his own face faint against the dark. He had built his career on reading people, investors, competitors, executives. He prided himself on knowing who could be trusted and who could not. And yet, the one person who had surprised him the most that week was a woman whose name had never appeared on any report. The next morning, Daniel requested something unusual. "Pull the employment files for the night cleaning staff," he told his assistant. There was a brief hesitation on the other end of the line. "All of them?" "Start with Elena Brooks," he said. The file arrived within minutes. Basic, sparse, no complaints, no disciplinary notes, no requests for overtime, no personal comments at all. Too clean. That afternoon, Daniel canceled another meeting. Instead, he walked the lower floors of his own building for the first time in years. He watched how people moved when they thought no one important was looking. Who said thank you, who did not, who noticed the cleaning staff, and who stepped around them as if they were furniture. By the time evening came, he had already made a decision. That night, Elena arrived to find a note clipped to her cart. "Please see Mr. Carter before beginning your shift." Her stomach tightened. She reread the note twice. She had done nothing wrong. She knew that. Still, experience had taught her that being called upstairs rarely ended well for people like her. Elena took a breath and rode the elevator up. Daniel was waiting in the executive conference room, alone. No assistants, no guards, just him and the long table that usually seated men who spoke in numbers and consequences. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Yes, sir," Elena replied. He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." She did. Daniel rested his hands on the table. "I have a question for you, Elena, and I want an honest answer." She met his gaze. "You will have one. Why did you take this job?" Elena did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was steady. "Because it pays consistently. Because it allows me to work nights. Because my mother needs care during the day." Daniel nodded. "And if you were offered something else?" Elena's eyes flickered with confusion. "Something else?" "A position with more visibility," he said. "More responsibility." She hesitated. "I'm not qualified for anything beyond what I do." Daniel leaned back slightly. "You returned confidential material without hesitation. You handled confrontation without defensiveness. You noticed what others ignored." Elena held his gaze. "Those are not qualifications. They are choices." A slow smile crossed his face. Not the kind he used in boardrooms, but something quieter. Something almost respectful. "Exactly," he said. Elena felt a shift in the room, subtle but undeniable. For the first time since she had stepped into the building, she was not being evaluated as a cleaning lady. She was being seen. And Daniel Carter, a man who had spent his life believing power revealed truth, was beginning to suspect that he had been testing the wrong thing all along. Elena left the conference room with her thoughts heavier than when she had entered. The offer Daniel Carter had implied was not clear yet, but the shift in his tone was. He had not spoken to her like an employee. He had spoken to her like a variable he was reassessing. That unsettled her. She returned to her cart and began cleaning, but her hands moved more slowly than usual. The hum of the building felt louder. Every reflective surface seemed to hold her gaze a moment longer. When her shift ended that night, Elena did not sleep much. She lay awake, listening to the city outside her small apartment, replaying Daniel Carter's words again and again. More visibility, more responsibility, words that sounded generous, but carried weight she could not yet measure. The next evening, she arrived to find her supervisor waiting near the service desk. "Elena," the woman said quietly, "Mr. Carter requested that you assist with a special assignment tonight." Elena's pulse quickened. "What kind of assignment?" Her supervisor hesitated. "Just be professional." Elena nodded. She was escorted back to the executive wing, this time not through the service elevator, but the main one. The doors opened onto a conference room already occupied. 3 executives sat around the table, 2 men, 1 woman, all dressed in suits that suggested long familiarity with power. Daniel Carter stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Thank you for coming," he said to Elena. "Please stand here." He gestured to an empty space near the wall. No chair. Elena complied without question. The meeting began. They discussed contracts, acquisitions, numbers that made Elena's mind spin. She focused on keeping her posture neutral, her expression unreadable. Then Daniel did something unexpected. Before we proceed, he said, turning to Elena, I would like your opinion. The room froze. One of the executives frowned. Her opinion? Daniel nodded. She has been listening. Elena felt every eye land on her. Heat rose in her chest, but she did not step back. Daniel met her gaze. You noticed something in a discarded report last night. Tell us what stood out. The woman at the table scoffed softly. With respect, Daniel, she is not qualified to comment on. She is qualified to observe, Daniel cut in. Silence followed. Elena swallowed once. The numbers in the second quarter did not match the risk profile mentioned earlier, she said carefully. Someone adjusted the projections downward without changing the assumptions. The room went still. One man leaned forward. That is not possible. Daniel picked up the report. It is possible, he said calmly, and she is right. The executive team exchanged looks. The woman at the table narrowed her eyes at Elena. How would you know that? Elena held her ground. Because mistakes stand out when you clean up after them every night. Daniel allowed a brief pause to stretch. That will be all, he said. The executives filed out, unsettled, their whispers sharp and hurried. When the door closed, Daniel turned back to Elena. You did not have to answer, he said. You asked, she replied. He studied her. Most people would have frozen. Elena met his gaze. I am used to being watched. Daniel exhaled slowly. That should not be something you have to be used to. He walked to the table and picked up a folder. This building tests people constantly, he said. Not with forms or interviews, but with power, with silence, with opportunity. He handed her the folder. What is this? Elena asked. A temporary reassignment, Daniel said. Observation role, paid, confidential. She did not take it immediately. Why me? Daniel did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. Because integrity does not announce itself. It reveals itself. Elena finally accepted the folder. I am not asking you to become someone else, Daniel continued. I am asking you to remain exactly who you are. Elena nodded once. Then I will need time. You have it, Daniel said. As she left the executive wing that night, Elena understood something had changed. Not just for her, but for the man watching from behind glass. Daniel Carter had built his empire by testing loyalty through pressure. Now, without intending to, he had begun testing himself. Elena did not open the folder until she was back in her apartment. She set it on the small kitchen table beside a stack of unpaid bills and a half-empty pill organizer. The contrast made her pause. She made tea, waited for the kettle to settle, then finally sat down. The folder was thin. Too thin for something that had already changed the direction of her life. Inside were a temporary badge, a brief description of duties, and a simple agreement. Observation role, confidential, hourly compensation listed clearly at the bottom. It was more than she made in 2 weeks. Elena closed the folder and pressed her fingers flat against the table. She was not afraid of work. She was afraid of being mistaken for something she was not. The next evening, she arrived early. She wore the same uniform, she pushed the same cart, but tucked into her pocket was the temporary badge Daniel Carter had given her. It felt heavier than it should have. Her first assignment was simple. Sit quietly in meetings, take notes, say nothing unless asked. That suited her. Over the next few nights, Elena moved between worlds. One moment she was wiping down a break room counter. The next, she was standing against a conference room wall, listening to executives argue over margins and leverage. She noticed patterns. Who spoke over others? Who repeated ideas once they came from the right mouth? Who treated service staff like air? Daniel watched all of it. He never announced her presence. He never defended her openly. He let the room reveal itself. On the fourth night, a senior manager raised an issue with budget discrepancies. The conversation drifted, growing abstract and defensive. Daniel glanced at Elena. You have been quiet. All eyes turned. Elena did not rush. The discrepancy is not new, she said calmly. It appears every third report, usually after revisions are made late at night. The manager stiffened. That is an accusation. It is an observation, Elena replied. Daniel nodded. Check the timestamps. Silence followed. Later, as the room emptied, Daniel spoke without turning around. You see what others avoid. Elena considered that. I see what gets left behind. By the end of the week, the tone in the building had shifted, quietly. People noticed when Elena entered a room. Some smiled too quickly, others looked away. She did not change her pace. She did not correct them. One evening, as she finished her shift, Daniel walked beside her toward the elevators. "You could stop cleaning," he said. Elena shook her head. "I will not." He looked at her, surprised. "Why not?" "Because it reminds me," she said. "And because some tests are only honest when no one is watching." The elevator doors opened. Daniel hesitated. "Elena." She met his gaze. "You were never meant to be invisible," he said. She offered a small smile. "Neither were you." The doors closed. For the first time in years, Daniel Carter stayed behind, alone, without reaching for his phone or his schedule. He stood in the quiet and understood the truth he had been circling. Power did not test character. It revealed it, and the person who had revealed his most clearly was the one he had almost dismissed without a second thought. By the second week, Elena understood the pattern. Daniel Carter did not announce changes. He created environments and watched how people behaved inside them. He shifted pressure points, adjusted silence, and waited. And people revealed themselves. Some grew careful, others defensive. A few became openly resentful. Elena felt it most during meetings. Conversations would pause when she entered. Jokes stopped mid-sentence. Chairs shifted. She was no longer invisible, but she was not welcome either. She did not take it personally. One evening, as she stood near the back of the conference room, a senior executive named Mark Reynolds spoke sharply. "With all due respect," Mark said, glancing at Elena, "I still do not understand why operational discussions require non-executive presence." The room stiffened. Daniel did not look at Elena. He looked at Mark. "You mean her?" Mark straightened. "I mean protocol." Daniel nodded. "Protocol exists to protect comfort, not truth." A murmur spread across the table. Mark continued, emboldened. "This company has standards. If we blur them, we weaken authority." Elena felt the familiar urge to disappear. She resisted it. Daniel folded his hands. "Authority that cannot withstand observation deserves to be weakened." Silence fell. Mark leaned back, crossing his arms. "So this is a test." Daniel's voice remained calm. "Everything is a test." The meeting ended shortly after. As people filtered out, Mark paused beside Elena. "Enjoy the attention while it lasts," he said quietly. "People like you are temporary." Elena met his gaze. "So are people like you." Mark scoffed and walked away. Later that night, Daniel found Elena in the hallway near the service elevator. "You did not have to respond to him," he said. "I did not respond to him," Elena replied. "I responded to myself." Daniel studied her. "That will cost you." "It already has," she said evenly. Daniel nodded once. He did not apologize. He did not reassure her. He respected her answer too much for that. The following morning, Daniel convened an unannounced review. Department heads were called in. Data was requested. Decisions were questioned. And patterns emerged. The discrepancies Elena had mentioned earlier traced back to Mark Reynolds. By the end of the day, Mark was placed on administrative leave. No announcement was made, no spectacle followed, but the message spread faster than any memo. That night, Elena arrived to find her cart missing from its usual place. For a brief moment, panic flickered through her chest. Then she saw it. Her cart stood exactly where it always had, cleaned, organized, restocked. A small card rested on top. "Thank you for what you leave behind." No signature. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She finished her shift in silence. As she stepped into the elevator, Daniel joined her. "They will not forget this," he said quietly. "Neither will I," Elena replied. The elevator descended. For the first time since this had begun, Daniel Carter understood the risk he had taken, not to his company, but to himself, because in exposing others, he had also stripped away the final excuses he had built around his own power. And Elena Brooks was no longer just an observer. She was the mirror he could no longer look away from. The pressure did not arrive all at once. It seeped in quietly. By the third week, Elena felt it in the small things. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Emails went unanswered. Requests were delayed just long enough to send a message. She was not welcome in the spaces she had been asked to observe. One evening, as she stood near the back of a meeting room, she noticed the shift immediately. The tone was sharper. Voices were careful, guarded. Daniel Carter was not present. That alone told her this was intentional. A vice president named Linda Shaw cleared her throat. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to address the elephant in the room." Several heads turned toward Elena. Linda continued, her voice smooth. "This observational role has created confusion. Morale has suffered. People do not know who they can speak freely around." Elena felt her chest tighten, but she remained still. "A culture of fear," Linda added, "is not healthy." Murmurs of agreement followed. Elena waited. No one asked her to speak. No one defended her. Linda concluded, "We need clarity. Either this experiment ends or we formalize boundaries." The meeting ended without resolution. When Elena stepped into the hallway afterward, she felt the weight of it settle fully. This was no longer about integrity. It was about control. That night, she returned home exhausted. She set her bag down and stared at the folder Daniel had given her weeks ago. Temporary reassignment. Confidential. No promises. Her phone buzzed. Daniel Carter. She let it ring once before answering. "You felt it today," he said, not asking. "Yes," Elena replied. "They are pushing back. I expected that." There was a pause. "I will not stop them," Daniel said. "Not yet." Elena closed her eyes. "Then you should know something. I am listening." "If this continues," she said evenly, "I will leave." Daniel did not interrupt. "I did not accept this role to become a symbol," Elena continued, "or a weapon. I accepted it because you said truth mattered." "It still does," Daniel said. "Then it must matter even when it costs you," she replied. Silence stretched between them. "You are right," Daniel said at last, "and that is why I have not stepped in." Elena frowned. "Why?" "Because the test is no longer about them," he said. "It is about me." The next morning, Daniel called a company-wide meeting. Attendance was mandatory. Elena stood at the edge of the auditorium as employees filled the seats. The tension was unmistakable. Whispers rippled through the room like static. Daniel stepped onto the stage. "I have allowed speculation to replace clarity," he began. "That ends today." He spoke calmly, deliberately, about observation, about accountability, about why systems fail when comfort matters more than truth. Then he did something no one expected. "Elena Brooks did not ask for this role," he said. "I asked her, and I stand by that decision." All eyes turned toward her. "She represents something this company has avoided," Daniel continued. "The view from below." He paused. "Anyone who believes integrity requires privacy is free to leave." The silence that followed was absolute. Later that day, Daniel found Elena near the service elevator. "I have drawn a line," he said. Elena met his gaze. "And if they cross it?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "Then I will choose you over my comfort." Elena studied him for a long moment. For the first time, she believed him. And for the first time since this began, she understood that the greatest risk in this building was no longer hers to carry alone. The shift after the company meeting felt different. Not quieter, not calmer, just honest. Elena noticed it immediately. People did not avoid her anymore. Some nodded stiffly, others offered polite smiles that did not quite reach their eyes. A few looked relieved, as if something heavy had finally been named. She did her work as she always had, but the building no longer pretended she was not there. Over the next several days, changes followed Daniel Carter's words, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Meetings included clearer agendas. Decisions required written justification. Late-night revisions were tracked instead of erased. Resistance did not disappear, it transformed. One afternoon, Linda Shaw submitted her resignation. No speech, no confrontation, just a letter and a quiet exit. Elena read the internal notice twice. She felt no triumph, only confirmation. That evening, Daniel found her in the break room, pouring herself coffee before her shift. "You were right," he said. Elena glanced up. "About what?" "About cost," Daniel replied. "Integrity does not just challenge systems. It removes people who rely on them staying broken." Elena nodded. "That is why people fear it." Daniel hesitated. "I have another question." She waited. "Would you consider formalizing your role?" he asked. "Not observation, not temporary. A permanent position." Elena studied him carefully. Doing what? Exactly what you have been doing, Daniel said. Seeing what others miss, saying what others avoid. And cleaning? She asked. Daniel smiled faintly. Only if you want to. Elena looked down at her hands. I need to be clear. Please. I will not be used as proof of progress, she said, and I will not stay if this becomes performative. Daniel did not flinch. I would not ask you to. Then I will accept, Elena said. On one condition. Name it. That I remain accountable to the same standards as everyone else, she said. No protection, no exceptions. Daniel nodded. Agreed. The following week, Elena Brooks took her place at the conference table. No announcement was made. No title was emphasized. She spoke when asked. She listened when she was not. And something unexpected happened. People began to tell the truth faster. Mistakes surfaced earlier. Discussions shortened. Blame lost its power. One evening, after a long day, Elena stood by the window overlooking the city. Daniel joined her, silent for a moment. You changed this place, he said. Elena shook her head. I did not. Daniel looked at her. You allowed it to be seen, she continued. That is different. Daniel smiled, not with pride, but with understanding. As Elena gathered her things to leave, Daniel spoke again. Do you ever regret stepping out of the background? She paused. No, she said, because I did not step forward. You stepped back. Daniel watched her walk away. For the first time in his career, he understood what leadership required. Not authority, but the courage to be observed. The announcement did not come with applause. There was no press release, no headline, no celebration. It came quietly, in an internal memo sent late on a Friday afternoon. Elena Brooks was formally appointed to an ethics and accountability role within the company, reporting directly to the founder. Her responsibilities were defined clearly. Her authority was limited by design. Her purpose was not power, but clarity. By Monday morning, everyone knew. The building did not change overnight, but it did not revert either. People adjusted. Some left. Others stayed and learned. A few resisted until they realized resistance no longer protected them. Elena continued to arrive early. She still greeted the security guards by name. She still carried her own coffee. She still walked the floors, listening more than she spoke. One evening, weeks later, Daniel Carter stood alone in the executive wing, watching the city fade into dusk. The glass reflected a man who looked different than he had months before, less certain, more present. Elena joined him, her coat folded over her arm. You stayed late, he said. So did you, she replied. They stood in silence, not awkward, not heavy, just honest. I want to thank you, Daniel said finally. Not for what you did, but for what you refused to do. Elena looked at him. Which was? You refused to disappear, he said, and you refused to become something you were not. Elena considered that. You were the one who listened. Daniel nodded. Too late, but not too late. He hesitated, then added, I confronted you that first night because I thought order came from control. And now? Elena asked. Now I know it comes from trust, he said, and from being willing to hear answers you did not expect. Elena smiled softly. That is a difficult lesson. I am still learning it, Daniel admitted. As they walked toward the elevators, Daniel spoke again. There is something else, Elena stopped. What is it? This building will remember you as the woman who changed things, he said. But I will remember you as the person who held up a mirror. Elena met his gaze. Then use it, she said, even when I am not here. The elevator doors opened. Daniel watched her step inside. Will you be here tomorrow? Yes, Elena replied. I have work to do. The doors closed. Daniel remained where he was, longer than necessary. For the first time in his career, success no longer felt like distance from others. It felt like proximity to the truth. And somewhere below, Elena Brooks walked into the night knowing something else. She had never needed to reveal her worth. It had been there all along. Sometimes, the most powerful test is not whether kindness survives power. It is whether power survives being seen.